Campaign and conquest, let's play TTRPGs done right. War games and gaming, with Storm and Magenta tonight. We got a new system best you'll ever see. A paracosmic convergence of distance masterpiece. It's got the hit shots and plays every genre so well that you would think it was crafted in the depths of hell. It's campaigns and conquests, the best that there is. War games and gaming, with a system that wins. Whether you're a pro or a fighting king, we've got something better, it's really the shit. Custom worlds, random tables galore, got all the backgrounds and so much more. It's campaigns and conquests, the only true way. War games and gaming, all night and all day. It's campaigns and conquests, better subscribe to the show. War games and gaming, and now you know. It's campaigns and conquests, and we're feeling alright. War games and gaming, we're Storm and Magenta tonight.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Campaigns and Conquest. Glad to have you all here with us tonight. Tonight's show is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be talking about a lot of different games and variations that allow players to play everything from basic to advanced levels. So we're going to get into those details, and I'm going to be relying on your host tonight. My name is Magenta, and I'm your co-host, and Storm is your host as usual. And he's the one with the knowledge. I'm the newbie, so I ask all the silly questions that everybody else is afraid to ask. So we'll get started here. And Storm, you want to tell us a little bit about how games have used that in the past to um, accommodate all levels of players, from those just starting out to ones who are kind of bored with the easy levels?
Well, yeah, sure. There's been, let's see how we put this. A lot of times I'll talk to people and they'll say, well, I like the new way that certain rules do things, or certain companies do things with rules. They got this thing and that thing, and they make things, this thing being maybe diagrams, examples of play that are illustrated, tutorials, narrative or programmed instruction, stuff like that. And they say, oh, I don't like those old ones because they don't do that. But the old guy here brings up au contraire, mon frere. They, in fact, did that very often. The difference is, primarily, is that printing, it's still expensive, frankly, if you're an independent, but printing was expensive. And these companies weren't very big comparative to other companies. It'd be one thing for Time Magazine, and even they weren't always color. But eventually their covers were, and so forth. But it was a little bit more for a company like Avalon Hill or even TSR to do that. So you got a set of rules that looked like stereo instructions. They were black and white. They very often had a format similar to Section 1, Paragraph A, Paragraph B, so on and so forth. And
like a lawyer wrote them.
like municipal code. And that seems boring and it seems a little head splitting, but it really is quite utilitarian, because you can go right to what you need without having to read a bunch prior. And when something's narrative, you have to parse a lot of text to get to that snippet that you need.
Right.
In order to answer a question. So I don't know that always these new ways of doing it are better. It may have something to do, and I don't want to get too deep into any social situation, but it may just be the way things are taught, the way people interpret his information or ingest it is different to some degree. Although that format isn't gone, and there's a lot of war games, at least that still use that kind of chapter 1.1.8. The difference is instead of being on very old feeling matte paper with black and white and little to no illustration, they're put on a glossy pamphlet that has color illustrations and things like that. And a lot of that's the difference. I've told this story before, and old people repeat themselves. It's still relevant. I'm going to tell it real quick. There was a game made by a company called Wakinto, and I may or may not be pronouncing that correct. It was a Japanese company, if I recall correctly. It was made a game back in the early 80s called Panzer 88. That was the World War II version. The modern version was called Main Battle Tank. These were tactical level war games. And when you open these things up, they were filled with information. They had cards for different charts and so forth. Everything was printed on, I think the variants, I think the different production runs were different, but the one I saw, everything was on a kind of off yellow. It was painful, this color, to a lot of people's eyes, and it had a black printing on it. And it was just, it wasn't the only one. There was another one. I loved the game, but it was called, God, I'm so old. I love the game, but I forgot. It was called, Jesus, you old son of a gun.
Hi, Kelly.
Anyway, it was printed on a blue background. A lot of the charts were, and with a black print, and it was really difficult to read. I remember actually even as a youngster, getting a headache looking at this stuff because of the color coordination. And some people complained about that. So, well, they would say it's a complex war game, or it's tedious or difficult because of these bad choices. I think these choices were due to cost. I think they got some deal on crappy colored paper that nobody else wanted or whatever. But
that was very common back in those days, as shortcuts would be taken that way. I remember, my dad was in the Navy, so I used to go to the Navy hospital for all my treatment, and the one in Portsmouth, the walls were always painted in hideous colors of this really awful yellow, marigold yellow, and seafoam green, and just like the worst color combinations you can imagine, because they were using leftover paint. It was cheaper. So to save money, that's what they would do. And
so these things, I mean, this would, generate this mythos of these things being difficult or whatever. And they may or may not have been. And as we've said numerous times on many streams, and it still is, is that editing was minimal, if not sometimes non-existent, in the 70s and 80s. I don't know why, but it wasn't there almost. So sometimes it wasn't that the concept was difficult in the rules. It was that the rule explaining, or the words explaining it, were salad. They just didn't make sense from a grammatical standpoint, not from a conceptual or standpoint at all. And so that contributed to it. Not everyone had these things, but a majority. TAC Air was the senior moment I was having. The title I was looking for was TAC Air. And TAC Air was a great example of, but yes, old games did do this, in that this being, there was a basic, an intermediate, and an advanced section to the rules. And typically what they did is they would put the basic in a larger pamphlet, and some of the more advanced, either optional or highly technical rules were in a smaller insert. Anyway, and it would walk you into it. I think the last time we did a live, I used this analogy. I use it a lot, and it's like going from the shallow end of the pool to the deep end. you're slowly immersing yourself in a means of, it's just like you're slowly learning things, just like you would in maybe in school. Chapter one of your history book is a very open and vague generalization about what you're about to learn. Gives you some introduction, tells you where you're going to go in and what you're going to learn and what you're expected to know by the end of the chapter and so on. And as you go in a little further, you start to get a little bit more advanced. Same thing with these war game rules. And the best ones, not all of them did this, but the best ones would tailor the scenarios that came with the game to those sections. Here's your basic scenarios. They only involve a handful of units of a certain type, so you can kind of get it down pat. Now, when you add in something like a lot of times, they would ignore anti-tank guided missiles in modern wargaming because that became a little bit more of a involved thing to track those particular weapons. So they would be in the intermediate, and all the rules, or all the scenarios for basic would omit that weapon system. And then
how did you have to track anti-air tank or anti-tank air-fired missiles? I guess whatever you call them. Sorry.
Anti-tank guided missiles. They were yes. They flew slower than the rounds, the kinetic rounds that came out of tanks and stuff like that. And they're back in the 80s, a lot of them were wire guided, and that could result in all sorts of shenanigans that happen between its launch and where it lands. So
describe wire guided. What does that mean? That you basically you shot something that was like a bullet with a wire at the target first, and then wherever that wire arc went,
it was a minimally steerable rocket or missile, and you had a joystick. And the one that I saw, the joystick looked exactly like the joystick I had on my TRS-80 Coco.
Oh wow!
I don't know why. I don't know that it was. Maybe they bought it from the same manufacturer, but it looked just like that, which made me think that's odd because that was the worst joystick ever friggin' made. But it was that, and you would steer it towards target. It had a little flare on the back of the missile that was burning just above where the engine was outputting the thrust, and you use that to follow it, and you were just like this is where you get that, just like a video game that some people use, to talk about modern combat. And I'm sure veterans thereof don't find that amusing, but it was, you steered it, and it flew slow, 300 some miles an hour. And because of the way that the system worked, sometimes you would be tracking those with chits on the board or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah, that sounds like a difficult element to add in. So I can see why they left that for advanced.
It wasn't difficult. It was fairly simplistic, honestly, but it was another layer on top. And what they were doing was, and Magenta and I have had these conversations about Warhammer and Games Workshop because they're very good at doing this and marketing it well, was spoon feeding things to people. So that, like my instructor, and again, Mr. Repetition, I know I said this last time we talked, but nonetheless, we had an instructor for my computer courses that used the analogy of what you're about to get in this semester is information on blast. It's like drinking from a fire hose. And some people felt that way when they were, oh, you want to play this game? And plop, you get a 180 page or 280 page hardcover book handed to you, and all of a sudden you felt like you were sitting at your desk back at high school. So instead, what they would do is they would just, here's section 1, start with that, spoon fed. All right, you've digested that, and you're still hungry for more. Here's section 2, the intermediate section that adds this, that, and the other thing. And you could slowly work your way into it, just like the pool analogy, walking from the shallow into the deep.
Well, it's actually more like diving into a series of different depths of pool, because that splash, that satisfaction of like splashing into something new, you look forward to it. If you remember being a kid, you go to the local pool and you're so excited to get there. You can't wait to get out of your regular clothes that you rode in the car in, and you get your towel and all your stuff set up, and your mom's like, hold on, you got to get sunscreen, and you're like running off trying to jump in because it's just so exciting to jump into a new pool. So this was kind of more like, yeah, it gets more in depth, it gets more detailed as you go, but it's like you get that new release each time that they would spoon feed the next book or next game, or module or whatever that would have more complicated things, new unit types, new rule sets, new, you know,
It
and
was,
it
it
was
was, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. But
it was like Christmas Day. You're opening up a new package with all new stuff, and you don't know what's going to be in it yet. The surprise factor and the excitement factor of waiting for it to be relaunched, and then getting it, being the first one to get it in some cases was a big draw. Sharing it with your friends, and you're all together, like, oh wow, this is so cool.
I had a different, back in the late 70s, early 80s, there was a different vibe, at least I had with my friends. It's not necessarily better. I'm not saying I'm smarter or anything like that. But when I got these things like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I get from my Uncle Tony and all that, I didn't want it in sections. I wanted to be like, Scrooge McDuck that just dives into that pile of, just pile of coins and just loves it. I wanted more of it. I wanted it, all of it. And I wanted to have it all at once and read it. And, I didn't want to go, okay, let's just play this little section of it for a while first. I wanted to take the huge bite. And now a lot of people are of the opposing approach to it, where they just want to, stick their toe in and then put their leg in and then finally get all the way in. Not me. Like you said, I wanted to jump off the deep end and just learn it all right away. It was exciting, and everything that it was doing to entice me from its marketing standpoint had me excited to get there and do it. The rules were a necessity. They weren't a hindrance, other than a hindrance to, we want to play, but we can't play until we read and learn these. So we voraciously and rapidly devoured them. And now people just want to take it a little bit slower. And that's cool. I get it. And a lot of people say that the difference was well, you were, such and such years old, and you didn't have to do what I have to do at such and such years old now. And there's some validity to
Right.
that. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I always hear the logical song in my head when that kind of conversation goes on, and it's true. So I get it. And there's an approach to it, but I do take not a huge exception, but I do like to correct that this is some new concept, because it wasn't. It went on in the 70s and 80s too.
Well, yeah, it is kind of like the difference between selling books as, one great big book, or if you have a series of, sequels that are coming out. And to some extent, I mean, if you're doing something where it's going to take you, like my favorite um, Wheel of Time series. I mean, I think there were 14 books altogether in that one before it finally got done. Now, he probably could have cut out some of the story and got it down, but I don't think it would have been as good a story without that. There was a
Mm,
lot of, well, okay, we can differ on that, but I thought they were very, very well done. More detail maybe than needed to be in some repetition, because I swear if I had to hear about Nynaeve grabbing her braid one more time
yeah, he was he he
to do
used those
something.
kinds of things. One book was everybody was licking their lips. One book everybody
Mhm.
was straightening their skirts. And if I had to hear about the lushness of the forest pines for the next 3 pages, I was going to commit Harry Carey. There was
You're
too much of that.
exaggerating a wee bit, but
Yeah, not
okay.
that much, man. They made us read that shit in school, and it was. I mean, the guy was just overly verbose in that kind of stuff. And as far as putting that into concept with rules, there's people that say, well, you're that's where the term down in the too far down in the weeds comes from, to some degree. And as much as I hate those jargon and all that, that's what they're aiming at when they use that particular phrase. We can cover that a little bit, but yeah.
Sequels and doing things in a serial like that has some advantages. It also has some disadvantages too. Because I'll tell you my feeling when you first discussed, the Warhammer type stuff, the whole system. And explained, how these are the basic rule sets, and then there's a magazine that you subscribe to, and new rules are released and new details are released, and I'm like, good God, this sounds like a career. But
that's a really interesting thing, because as much as everybody revered that as being a more simplistic and easier to digest thing, it was that it became a cash cow, and it became one of these cash flow cows, where this month we've come out with this new thing and you've got to get it and act now. All of a sudden they were telling you when you were going to spend your money. But back in the day, and I'm sorry if the fuddy-duddy comes out with "in my day," but it was, you went into the store and you perused and you chose, wow, that's cool. They came and look at what they just did. Now it's, we just came out with this new thing, and here's our Kickstarter, and throw your friggin' money at us as fast as you can and act now, because we're only going to make this much. And like P500, which is now what they call, they've got different words for it, but we called it in wargaming P500. When that idea came out, if you're not familiar with P500, here's the deal.
Yes, you explain, because I have no idea what you're talking about right now.
I forget what they call it now. Other people call it, but basically it was this. Here's a preview of the new game we're going to make. Does it look cool? Do you like it? Well, give us your money now, pre-order, and you'll get it when we're done. But we're not even going to think about printing this bad boy till we get 500 pre-orders for it, because they wanted to guarantee that they weren't going to lose money on the product before they made it. When that first came out, I had seen beet red spittle coming out. Some of these guys were so mad at the idea, because it was, this is when you're going to spend your money. We're going to sit on your money for a considerable amount of time before you can even expect the product to exist, let alone before you can expect to have it in hand, and all to assure us of financial security, us being the company, while you give money with no security. Not that they were going to keep it unless they wanted to get sued a lot, but it was your money, and they were sitting on it like it was a bank, and you couldn't use it. If you didn't get the 500, they'd send you the money back. But that could be 6 months from the time you give it to them.
Right.
Oh, now that's a normal thing. It's amazing how people tolerate that sort of stuff as it goes on long enough. But boy, I remember.
You're describing the essence of Kickstarter. Basically, that's what that is.
A little bit.
We need this amount of money to make a product. If you like the concept of the product, and you want to, if you get in early, you get a reward for getting in early. And then if it doesn't come to fruition, then we're obligated to give you your money back. But it may be a long time, because we're going to try and raise the money until we get it. But
so back to Warhammer, where this came up. So what I found with Warhammer is, I let myself, and I feel silly for being gullible, because I let a couple of people. This is why I'm not a fan of credentialism, because I was a dummy that let people talk me into something because I thought they were experts in all this, and they didn't have a ulterior motive. So I played Micro Armor, which is little 1-inch metal tanks. It was my favorite thing, and it started to get to the point where I couldn't find people to play it. This is where it started, where everybody started talking, complexity and simplicity and all that stuff that I hate so much. And part of the reason I hate is because people started to believe it, and all of a sudden they wouldn't sit down and be open-minded and play the game I wanted to play. They just immediately assumed it was horrible and too hard to play and all that crap. So guy says, yeah, that's just the way it is. You're going to have to move into something else. And the guy tricked me. I let him talk me into buying 2nd edition Warhammer, 40K. So I start going to a hobby store that was closer than the one that I bought the original set from, so just as convenience. And they said, yeah. I said, you play this in the store? Because I want a place where I can meet people to play it and all that. So yeah, sure. Well, first of all, they played it like it was a tournament. They had you have to have this many points. It wasn't some laid back thing where I call up a guy and say, hey, you want to play? And we just, kind of very casually come up with something. Oh, no, this was like some sort of tournament situation, which I was not interested in. But I said, okay, if this is the way it's going to go, I'll give it a shot. So I show up to one of these matches, and these guys are pulling things out of magazines. There's a magazine called White Dwarf that Games Workshop made, and they would give you a unit and the rules to the unit that were only in the magazine. I was not a big fan of subscribing to magazines. I had done it from time to time, but I didn't have the money to subscribe to them all, and I wasn't that interested in Warhammer to do it. So the super easy game was all of a sudden became this monstrosity. Have you ever seen how much material somebody can, acquire and accumulate for owning some of that stuff? It's just ungodly. And to have somebody pull out some trump card I didn't know how to prepare for that. I didn't know it existed. Well, it was the tournament rule number subsection A, B, and they got all that
in a magazine you've never seen before, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I knew it existed, but I didn't know that. I said
that's that issue you've never seen before,
right? Yeah. So it's like, sure, it may be simple because you read a 3x5 card and that's all the information you need. But all of a sudden, when you're having this stuff shoved at you so fast, that starts becoming this giant. I saw people showing up with card catalogs, mobile card catalogs, filled with these unit cards, like the kind of thing your mom would put recipe cards in back in the day. They had so much of it. So
the 3x5 card organizers.
So it didn't seem bad for somebody who had been into it for a while. But if you walked into it later on down the lifespan of this thing and you had never touched it, all this talk about it being some easy, approachable system sounded like baloney. Because I for folks that are listening, if they're still on, me and Magenta, I said, watch this. And we went to Mills Mall in Chicago, and there was a game, one of the first Games Workshop retailers, at least in my area there. And I said, check this out. So I went in there and I told, hey, I've heard about this stuff. I actually owned a lot of it, but I said, hey, I've heard about this stuff and I'm really interested. Can you help me out? And the guy says, I just want to buy in. What's it going to cost me and what I need? And I came out with I had to hold it in both arms like it was a stack of firewood. Here's the basic set. Here's this. Here's that. Here's the paints. I said, okay, so what can I do with this? Well, you can play this basic scenario inside the one book. Well, that's no good. I want an army to fill here. And then it got up to my chin. It was this stack of stuff. It was $250 or $300 or something like that to buy in. And hey, I had to consume all that stuff to start. And not only that, if you want to play I want to play Space Wolves. I thought they were cool. But that's not enough. You have to have the intelligence on your enemy if you want to know what they're capable of so that you can plan how to defeat them. So you start having to buy troop lists that you're not even going to use just so you can understand what you're going to fight. It is there when people go, well, you're one of those weird old guys that played crazy, complicated games like Advanced Squad Leader. I'll set that rule book up against that pile of information that goes with 40K any day.
Now, be fair though, 40K. I know you enjoyed playing. It's a fun game.
Here's the thing. Nah, not so much.
Okay. Whoops, I stepped in that one.
Okay.
Okay, explain.
The original system was a lot of fun because it was new and interesting, and it was neat to see sci-fi applied to what was basically just old Featherstone and Grant wargame rules. Beyond that, it was one of the first that I saw, along with BattleTech, that had a fully functional world. This giant bunch of lore that came with the game, and the models that they make are phenomenal. They're interesting. They're clever. and that was very appealing. And the game was fun to a degree, but this is one of those deals where you go, this stuff is so basic that I think what happened with me is I could very quickly see through the veil of this is an interesting game, and behind it was, here is a giant marketing scheme. And everybody wants to sell their stuff. Everybody wants to you go into business and make profit. I don't, put you down for that. But this thing was like getting into a pyramid scheme, the way that they had everything set up and they kept pushing it on you. And it was too high pressure, was too high cash flow. There was too much about spending money and not enough about the mechanics and the play. And I quickly said, this sucks. Plus, it wasn't really true that everybody had stopped playing the games I played. It just kind of, evolved a little bit, and you had to look into other places.
Well, I heard a rumor that it was because you couldn't paint.
There's also that. I do absolutely. I don't find that the interesting part about it. There's lots of people who are phenomenal painters, and some people they're more miniature painters and collectors than they ever are war gamers. And the stuff they make's beautiful, and I'll never have the talent or the patience to do it. I envy that, and I appreciate it. But I just was like, I didn't have the patience to learn. And I didn't like the idea of bringing something that looked like shit and going, well, I'm just starting, so don't be mean to me about it, because it was just a way it was like showing up to school in Buster Brown pants. If you couldn't paint well. So, and I didn't have the time for that. To me, that wasn't enjoyable. It was tedium that had to be done in order to put the thing on the table to play with it. And I preferred to just go straight to the table and play. That's why years later, I really love the idea of pre-painted stuff. I had World War II stuff that was pre-painted. Did it look as good as somebody's model set? No, but that didn't matter. I was playing with it on a field of battle. It wasn't meant to be a museum piece that I put on a shelf. It was cheap and it was durable and it looked good enough to play a game with. I liked that. Personal thing.
Well, and then you wouldn't cry if it got broken as well.
Right. It wasn't the end of the world. Right. Yeah. Even if I could paint models, I know guys that played with Tamiya kits as miniatures, and I thought, there's no way. That's like, those things were so brittle. But yeah. So, but anyway, either way, there are ways to approach rules that are starting in little sections, more palatable, bite-sized, beginner to end. I have one here, and this is one where a lot of people would go, this is too complicated. A lot of people said that about it at the time, frankly. Not everybody. A lot of people played it too. Is this going to show up on my thing or not? Yeah.
What I've noticed is one person's complicated is another person's challenging. So it really kind of all depends on what your preferences are, because some people like a challenge like that, and other folks are looking for something that they don't have to, where it is more of the I'm trying to think of the right wording that fits, where it's a fun game, but you don't have to invest a lot of time in learning the rules of it in order to play it effectively.
Well, me and that stuff, I get a little bit, grouchy about it because here's one.
Okay.
Let's take a look at the credits here, because some of these guys I know. Kostakin. And if look, man, I don't hate the man. I always get corrected on the pronunciation. Sorry, bro. Kostakikan, however you say that. Some of these guys, a little bit terse, but Goldberg. But anyway, none of this stuff is hard.
This was for ages 12 and up. Copyright 1985, West End Games.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. None of this stuff was none of this stuff is hard. What it is it's more than you want to spend in mental effort in order to have fun. And that's fine. That's your choice. That's where, you don't want the, fine. But that doesn't translate to it being unplayable. You don't want to play it. But why I always get so spun up on this stuff is people change it from it's not my scene to you can't do it, it's stupid and it sucks, or it's too hard and it's a bad design and yada yada yada. And then they start chasing off people who otherwise might have played it because they weren't inundated with that mythology and that constant jargon that people always invoke in these games.
Kind of reminds me of like the way wine is dealt with, where you have the whole like there's a certain group of people who are like wine has to be this particular kind of thing, only these wines from these years are any good, and if you're not drinking that, you might as well be getting Wild Irish Rose at the gas station,
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and there's an ego that comes with design. Some of these guys, having communicated with them, they become very terse and very angry when you challenge their philosophy or disagree with their statements, because they've got their names in design credits. But some of them are old enough that they contributed to games that they now consider bad, but you wrote this thing. Well, the philosophy was different. No, it's not up for sale now. It was up for sale then. And what's up for sale now isn't this. So there's more to it. There's a lot of reasons why people invoke all these things are too hard to play and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of psychology behind it. There's a lot of different motivations behind it. But the bottom line for me is that there wasn't, look, we were a lot younger than I am today, with a lot less education under our belt and a lot less experience in gaming. And we picked up games like this and we sat down and worked through the rules, and with exceptions where things might have been worded improperly. There was like I said, not only was editing, proofreading was a problem. There was times when things were, well, we meant this. Say here, Section 7 refers to Section 8, but we really wanted it to refer to Section 9, stuff like that. There's a lot of mistakes. You used to get magazines, and the magazines were from a particular company, and they'd be like, here's our, they would call it addendum, or something like that. And it would be a list of, here's all the things we goofed before printing. Or after printing, and we found out we goofed here, and here's the corrections to all our mistakes post the game, and then you would get them and go, okay, well, now this makes more sense and stuff like that. There was a lot of that, but the idea that they were unplayable,
that still goes on, but now it comes in the form of patches for your video games.
That's right. And it's code and stuff like that. Yes, a lot of these,
and the site, with that, it's worse, because if you got a bad code in your game, it just won't play. At least with this, you could be like, okay, I'm not sure I'm interpreting this right. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. Maybe it was written wrong, but you could still find a way through it, versus you turn the game on, it won't even run. Or I got to this point in this level and suddenly everything crashed. So, I mean, there is that it did have that going for it.
But you can play these games. Here's the thing. Unplayable means I got sick and tired of it. I wasn't that interested to begin with. I don't want to read that much to play a game, and other things like that. That's what unplayable is.
Or it's not for me.
And that's fine. But why not just say that? Right. Why not just say that instead you get all this jargon from people, or not everybody on this list is a horrible person. I don't mean to say that, but some of them got a little bit grouchy, like maybe I do now or whatever. And they'd give you long-winded lectures and invoke all sorts of their own jargon and tell you why it has to be, can't be done. And you don't understand, and you're just you don't have the credentials, so you can't possibly comprehend and all this crap. And then you go, I'm old enough to remember when you made the games that you're now deriding, so I always found that funny. But they're not that bad. So they can be done.
Well, we're neglecting the most loved game of all, the one that everyone plays, and it's not just in wargaming or role playing games or even going to the movies. And that's the game where you go back afterwards and you look at it and critique everything about everything. So, I mean, that is kind of a pastime. So I get where. So if somebody has had an experience with a game that they don't like, they're going to go through and do that kind of thing. It makes sense. But it's still, to me, from what I've seen, and granted, I came in as a kind of outsider, but, I've known Storm long enough and been around long enough to know kind of some of the things that he's run into with the gaming and the whole community of it. And it's not any different than any other kind of pursuit that people have, but a lot of it just really boils down to preference. And then, there's a smaller amount of people, I think, who are the pool of players is what's really the thing that everyone is concerned about. Because if somebody else is playing a game that is not the kind of game you prefer to play, then that's one less player that you have to be on your team or to be on the opposing team when you want to go and play a game. So there's a little bit of a battle that goes on that way too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. But as you see up here, do I still have the sharing on? No, I do not. Let me just try one more time. You can see that there are advanced rules with it. There was this one that was standard game and then advanced rules. But some people called it, some companies would use basic, intermediate, advanced. Some people would call it standard. The phraseology differed somewhat, but the idea was you started with a standard game, make sure you got all the basic concepts down, play a couple of scenarios that feature that, and then dive into something further. And then when you're finally done, you get into, if you can see it down here, I can't see you got campaign scenarios. And that's where, okay, now that we've got it all down pat, we can take the whole thing and stir it into one big pot and have, and that was, it was like video games where you get through all the levels and you have the big final battle. The whole idea was, for me, was to get to the campaign games because those were the most interesting and immersive situations. I didn't have, there's, like I said earlier, a lot of people go, well, it was different when you were this age and you didn't have to worry about things. But the reality is there was a lot of reasons why that wasn't true. I didn't have unlimited amounts of time to play these games for a variety of reasons. And I'm not alone with that. So when we did have that opportunity, we weren't going to wade into the shallow end and dog swim or whatever it is, puppy paddle or whatever the word is. Doggy paddle in. We were going to go in there and jump into the back end because this is it, man. We got this amount of time on this Saturday when we aren't going to get thrown out of the house, told it's too messy to set up, insert a variety of other things. So we were going to do it up big. And I'm still that way, especially with a community of gamers who are never stop talking about how they have no time. They sure spend a lot of time talking about how they have no time. Maybe if they spent more time doing it instead of saying they don't have the time, they would have the time to do it in some cases. But whatever the reason is for not playing very much. So I'm still in the realm where if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it big. Otherwise, I can just flip on, and this is a pale comparison. This is not the main course, but if I can't get anything better, then I'll default back to the PC, hope that everything works on it because they're always crashing and and play that. It was a fallback. My PC games were a lot of fun, but I didn't look forward to playing them as opposed to a tabletop. I played them because I couldn't get people to play tabletop or they didn't have the time. But I want to play big, and it's not difficult, and it doesn't take forever. I remember playing at these games at Gen Con, and Gen Con in Milwaukee would let observers come in, and there was a couple of rooms that they could walk around in. They couldn't play or anything like that. They could just walk around and check it out, and they would walk by some of these war games that I had laid out that I was playing with people. Wow, how could you ever do that? It'll never end. And thinking, what are you talking about? I finished this game and I'm ready to play some more of it. There's lots of people who insisted that you've never finished a war game because they're too long to play. And eventually
that's what my mom said about Monopoly.
Yeah. See? and that kind, but she doesn't like games.
Play, you'll never finish that before bedtime. No.
And it was an excuse because she's not a fan of games. And that was a great way to say, no, I don't want to get involved and I don't want you to make the mess to do it.
Right. Because she'd have to badger us about quitting the game and putting it all away. And then we'd argue, but we're not done yet. And,
right. So, and as a parent, you do that sort of stuff.
Yes.
So I'm not calling her a liar per se, but that the fact of the matter is that if everybody wanted to sit down and play Monopoly, there's two things. You sit down, if you're truly motivated and wanting to play the game, you understand the amount of time it takes to complete it. And you're willing to do that because you want to have the fun that goes with completing it.
Well, to be fair to my mom,
you could do
right,
it.
And we were fibbing.
Yeah, but
we knew that playing Monopoly was going to mean that we would end up asking her to stay up later, which is what we wanted to do from the beginning. So.
Well, right. So, but my point is that it's a great example. Or at least an analogy to what happens with a lot of people that say it's too complex, it's too clunky, you'll never finish or whatever that. Really, there's a motivating factor behind it. It's a veil for, I don't really like this. I don't really want to spend the time at it, but I don't want you to think that I'm stupid or lazy. I don't want to hurt your feelings. I just, there's all sorts of reasons, but they always manifest themselves in these same linguistic, well, it's too difficult, too complex. And that's when people sit around. This is what I love about wargaming. Actually, I hate it, but this is the thing that comes up all the time is every 5 or 6 years, every once in a while, there'll be these giant discussions. Well, the hobby's dying. We're not getting new people. How do we keep this hobby going? Stop telling everybody it's a tedious chore to play every game. That the games are overly complex
that was sorry, that caught me off guard, but that's literally true.
Your entire vocabulary and 90% of your conversation is about how much it sucks. No wonder nobody wants to do it. Stop saying that. Just go, this is fun. Well, that one looks like too much. Oh, it's just like if you were if you were the person that was running a salad bar and you had to serve the customer, what would you like, sir? Well, can I interest you in some of the? No, I'm lactose intolerant. Very well. Well, here's another option. Instead of, yeah, you're right. This stuff is a bunch of crap. You'll never finish that. Don't take that much. You'll never finish it. That's too rich. Nobody should be eating that. If you were, stop being a naysayer and start being an ambassador and a salesman for the hobby that you want to get people to participate in.
Right.
And that's why when you go on Twitter, I don't know if it's affecting how people perceive me, if they just find me, I hear a lot of people go, you're so negative, you cut on everything. I do. Shit, I cannot put forth an idea on Twitter without having it getting shot down with all the same words. Right. Just if I can break people, I mean, I know I can't. I shouldn't make it like I understand, but if the people would break themselves of these constant discussion points, that everything would be more fun. It would be more open, and you would still have people that could easily go, that one's just too damn big for me. I don't want to read all of that. I would much rather enjoy Memoir 44 as opposed to Advanced Squad Leader, and that's fine. But when you do that, you kill off possible newcomers, and like Magenta said, there's this clandestine friction and backstabbing where I don't want people to think that game's fun because I don't want to play it and I want those people to play my game. So all you're doing is being an ambassador for what you want. You're just trying to you're all fighting over this limited pool of players, and it just makes everything chaotic. And and people go, why are these people always arguing with one another?
But the irony is that the pool of players could be expanded to be larger if we would all just agree and acknowledge that there could be a wide variety of games designed to appeal to basic, intermediary, and accomplished players. But so you can meet all the needs of that, and people will find their niche when it's
or they could move into it from level 1 to level 2 or whatever.
Or you could have a group of players who you've started out at the basic level, you've moved on to intermediary or even advanced, and then a new player comes along who wants to play, rather than going, well, this game's too complex for you, or this game you'll never be able to, go backwards, or you can go back to the basics for a little bit and walk a new player from that shallow end to the deep end. That could be very fun, especially for younger folks, to keep the gaming growing. But I think there could be something, and I don't know how you feel about this, Storm. We haven't talked about this in advance or anything, so if you disagree, feel free to tell me what you think. I know you will. But anyway, it could be that it might be useful to have some sort of kind of rating system for these games, as far as like recommended level. I mean, the age, like ages 12 and up kind of thing, but with maybe a little more detail of like exactly what you can expect from a particular game, and where it's complex or where it's simple or where it's where it fits in that kind of compendium of different options.
Okay, well, here's another one of those deals where everybody goes, if they would have done that, that would have been great. And then you go, but they always did.
Right.
And there was,
okay.
Yeah, that always was there.
Maybe it needs a refresh so that,
here, take a look.
The arguments can be put to bed and everybody can just have.
When you say refresh, I'm not sure what you mean.
Where it's where now that time has passed and you've got a stretch of gaming history that goes back to, heck, H.G. Wells, if you want to go as far back as you can. But, where
there's an example. I don't know how well you see that. Let me see if I can make that bigger so you can see.
Make it bigger. That would be helpful. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So now it doesn't. Hold on.
Wow. I'm surprised that content. Okay. NATO, huh?
So you can see down at the bottom, there is complexity and solitaire suitability, and a low, medium, and very high rating for both as a little gauge. So they're saying that this has a high solitaire suitability. So you don't need to find opponents, or if you can't find opponents, you can still make some use out of it. It's not a terribly complex game. It's got medium complexity comparative to others. And Avalon Hill did something similar. It didn't look like that, but there was a similar thing with it, where they would rate things.
And that is a valid point. What I was thinking more in lines of was something that was cross production, because I mean, like you say, that people who are the manufacturers or the publishers of these games would have their own standards of what they consider complex and what they don't, versus where you have, actual gamers, actual players, giving their assessment of the way that these games go.
There was, but it wasn't, that wasn't on the individual taste. Somebody might, it would be a review inside a magazine or something like that, or later on a website when that came. But it would be, just like critics are different. Siskel and Ebert may have hated Star Wars, but some other critic who isn't, I don't. Those are the only two names I need.
Did
But
they hate Star Wars? I'm now
they
got
hated Star Wars. I remember them panning it pretty hard. If I recall
really.
right, yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
I never
So
really watched critics. I've never been one who really. I don't like critics generally.
yeah, I don't agree. Usually,
To
9 times
me,
out of 10, when I go to something they hate, I like it.
well, to me, this is just unique to me. I think I don't know. I might not be. It may not be unique to me, but um, I don't want to hear someone. I don't want someone else coloring my opinion of something before I have a chance to try it myself. That's just my feeling on it. Now, I
That's
mean, if someone tells me this movie is an action movie, or like a little bit about like what genre it's in, that could be helpful. Because I don't like rom coms. I don't like this type of genre. I don't like, so I'm going to avoid those types of things that are geared towards those audiences. But if you tell me this movie is bad, well, okay, maybe you say that, but there have been movies that have been labeled quote bad, real clunkers that I actually liked.
something. I'm sorry to interrupt, but something is loose. It's every time you talk, you sound like something's being banged. There's a thumping that's good. I just want to let you know
Oh,
something's loose.
oh no, that's my leg.
Oh,
That's a nervous. Yeah, my legs get jumpy this time of night, so I apologize, everyone. I'll try and keep them on the floor.
I
Sorry.
just thought there might be equipment you might want
No,
to.
I got
But
the
yeah,
Jimmy legs. Sorry about that.
um, but yeah, and you are not the only one that has that opinion. I think that probably colors a lot of why there wasn't the universal rating system that you're talking about.
Well,
Um,
not so much a rating system of like this game's good or this game's
no,
bad.
that's not what I mean.
Oh,
But ratings like rated PG-13 or something like that. You
mhm.
know, so the companies did that internally so that you could say, here's a product that we make that suits your needs. Here's where what we're all talking about here is not everybody's at the right level. Some people want to start low and graduate to high or whatever. Maybe they want to stay where they're at, whatever it is. And they could get the information about the game that they needed as far as, is this going to be more than I want or more than I think I can handle or whatever the thing is, and turn the thing over and it'll tell you. If
Hmm.
if if medium or high or very high is too much for you, we have a wide variety of products, and here's some that are down on the low level or the medium level or whatever it is, and you can maybe select from them. So it helped them inform the. It was a great idea to inform the customer about the product before they purchased it. So, but getting the whole industry to go, yeah, we'll let a group of people start telling our customers where I wouldn't think they'd want that because I think
Oh
they
yeah, no, I wouldn't
yeah.
think that the game producers themselves would participate in that necessarily. Um, but I think it could be still something.
But they had
That,
industry reviews and stuff like that that
yeah.
did that sort of thing too. So, but like you say, I've listened to plenty of or read plenty of reviews about video games and stuff where you just go, what is this guy talking about? Because what they think is cool or fun may not be what you think is cool or fun. So they've never been very utilitarian for me. The only I just I wouldn't put any stock into them either because I don't want to be told what is good or bad. I want to go see it for myself,
Right.
and I'll determine if it's good or bad for me. The little can you play this solitaire thing? That's cool. That's helpful because unfortunately some people just don't have a lot of players around them, so they can kind of base their purchase on something they can do to entertain themselves if they want the product, and maybe later on you can find somebody to play. So that's great. I got no problem with that. But anyway, but that's what we're talking about. It's always been there to guide you in some form or fashion as to whether this game is that complex. But again, all of those are can be somewhat subjective. So it's just so instead of listening to a bunch of jargon or reviews or tutorials or that guy on the YouTube, and this includes me, who has done it for a long time, maybe they can be helpful to steer from you. What I like to do more, and what I want to do more of with this thing, is show you how you can and play the game so you can see them being played, and be informative. There's enough people out there that are being critics. There's enough people out there that are talking about the social and political implications of all that. I don't want to get so, but just try it. But try it without being. Try to tune out all that jargon. It's bad. It's horrible. Here's a funny thing. We were just talking about this before we turned it on, and started the live. Wargaming. Advanced Squad Leader is commonly referred to as a ridiculously overly complicated and over complex system that is too hard to play and yucky, bad, icky, lots of words and stuff, and too much math or whatever. Yet it remains the one of the best, if not the best seller. And when you go look around at all the games made by Avalon Hill and the subsidiaries that they acquired as they went down, SPI and Victory Games, it is the top, maybe not, well, the top seller, I'm pretty sure. And definitely for every war game club, the majority of them are ASL based to this day. So what's up with that? Well, it's just like we were talking earlier about 40K. Once you get it, once you learn it, it's easy to keep on learning the other stuff. So the guy that I talked about that had the card catalog of all that stuff, and I looked at that and thought my head's going to split open trying to learn all that, let alone my wallet not being able to afford it. But for him, that was over a period of time where it became very simple for him to interpret the new stuff that was going on because he had already become very versed in the basics and the foundation of all those things. So it was just another data card for him. And the same thing with Squad Leader. You start out with a couple of countries, and you learn what the numbers on the counters mean, and then later on it starts bringing in different countries. Now there's nothing that bad about learning it. You already know what all the numbers mean. They just apply to the Japanese versus the British, or the Italians versus the Germans, or whatever it is. So nothing's all that new. Now, maybe you didn't play with winter when you first started, and you want to move to the Russian front, and there's going to be a lot of winter. So it's not that difficult just to learn how snow affects it, as opposed to learning all the weather rules all at once. So even though that is a big chunk of change to learn, it's subdivided. You can go through it by chapter, and it has programmed instruction. If you not understand what programmed instruction is, it's a tutorial that you play the game with as you read it. It also has a narrative instruction where this little drill sergeant in tech shows up, and he's going to tell you how to shoot and all that sort of stuff. The other thing is fan support and fan tutorial. There's a man, at least his channel still was alive last time I looked. Unfortunately, I don't believe he is anymore. But he was a college professor, and he made a phenomenal tutorial where he explains the basics of Squad Leader. So everybody goes, well, they look at that huge thing and go, oh, I don't want to read all that. Look how that's all arranged. Well, you don't have to anymore. You can listen to that video, and you'll see that very harshly written, and when I say harshly, I mean the way the printing and contrast on color was back in the day, small little font, arranged in a way that makes it look like you're reading a lawyer's book, goes away. And when you listen to the video and see the thing done with visual aids, all of a sudden it doesn't seem like the insurmountable monster that book makes it look to be. It's not that difficult. It really isn't that complex. It's got other things that have some criticism about, and they have more merit. But it's intimidation is a word that a lot of people recoil at when you use it in this context. But that book does look intimidating when you page through it, and it's
just
not
the
that bad.
sheer volume sometimes of some of the books, where you're
Right.
looking at. And not this isn't just something that applies to war game like tabletop games or board games or anything like that. I remember the first time I ever took a look at Hearts of Iron. I went, what? Oh my god!
And there's a I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to jump
Yeah.
just to say one thing. That's one of those games where for everybody that goes, these damn manuals in these war games are too much and they're too big. Try to play a game where it doesn't have enough, because a lot of the Hearts of Iron manuals, they don't tell you enough at all. You read that and you still don't know what the hell's going on behind the scenes, and then you've got to go to a website where a group of people who are all well-meaning, at least now it's different because you have more YouTube and all that. But the first Hearts of Iron, a lot of it was forum based, and you had no, that's not what that means. That's not how you do it. You had all this crosstalk and trying to figure out what the hell they were all talking about to understand one concept became very difficult. But but lack of documentation is worse than over documentation. You'll wish you had that that big manual because there's so much to that game. But she's right. Video games can be equally overly complex.
Not just games, but try and take a look at some of the recording software for streaming.
Right. And there again, they have a lot of viewer support or user support, although not all of it's correct. Some people aren't good at explaining things. Some people make errors. They think they know what they're talking about and they don't. And you read it because you need to know. It's all. I understand credentialism to a degree. I'm not a big fan of it, and I think it's overused and I think it's weaponized and all that. But you have to be careful when you look at fan-supported stuff, because does the fan really know what he's talking about? Although when you go, but like I said earlier, when you go to official documentation, there's a lot of times where they were saying the wrong stuff too, whether it just be on error or whatever. But so it's talking too much about it makes it sound more complicated than it is. We have this weird effect that we wanted to analyze this, we wanted to discuss it and show that it's easy to do. But if you make a 2-hour discussion about how easy to do it is, all of a sudden it doesn't sound like you're doing yourself any. You're not really making your point when you. But
well, to be fair, we haven't really. Now, if we were if this was a 2-hour, if we were having a 2-hour discussion about one particular game and we're like going through all of the ins and outs of that and still didn't clarify anything about how easy or not easy it was, you'd have a point there. But we're talking about an entire genre of, well, at least 30 years worth of war game experience that you've had. Well, more actually. So, that's a vast subject. So you're never going to tackle the whole entire 30-year history of what you know about war games or role-playing games, or board games for that matter, in that amount of time. It's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I really did want to, I don't want to go too long on this because I think we're kind of, I found that often sometimes we get cyclical and we do 2 hours of doing
the same thing.
And no, that's not your fault. It's as much as mine as anything. Right now, there's only a limited amount of people watching. I would like to do this though. If you're up for it, is go through some of these replies that we've gotten. We've never highlighted replies. We got replies from people on. Okay. On old
Absolutely.
YouTube.
And I would also like to bring up too that we appreciate every reply, every comment, every reply. Feedback is how we know where everyone is at and what questions people have, or how we're doing as far as the show goes. Also, too, if you like the content that you see from us, please do like, share, and subscribe. Helps us out a lot. We're trying to grow a channel. And participation, too, is always something that we welcome. So if you've been listening and you're fired up with something you really just got to get off your chest and you want everybody to hear your point of view, no matter how different it is from ours, please do request to come up on the mic. We'll be glad to have you up here so we can have a real discussion and hear a variety of points of view. So, but yeah, go ahead and share with us what you got for replies.
All right. Now I'm not gonna, because look, we all know how the internet works, and not every reply is, on the up and up. So, but we'll go through the ones that are okay. So.
Well, you don't read any that would get us kicked off of YouTube, okay?
Right. Well, even then, sometimes, well, whatever. Anyway, let's see. Now, I didn't have this planned out, so I'm just kind of going through things. Yeah. All right. Okay, here we go. Now, this screen name, I don't know if I can say that, but this is about, well, and I don't want to get into too many contentious topics either. Yeah, that's nothing. Oh yeah. Guys, I saw that I got a lot of replies, and I just figured, hey, oh, neat. I'm very excited to share replies. The internet can be pretty toxic. Wow.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Yeah. So, but here's one I guess we won't get thrown off the air for. We were talking about speeding up combat and exploring fantasy campaigns. This was done 5 months ago. I don't understand why these are showing up now after all this time, but here they are. So understand they're dated, but whatever. So let's just take a look at, they have a time recording. So let's put some context to it by playing the portion that they're talking about on the system we're talking. Oh, I have to use the share system, don't I? It all helps to do that. Yeah. Let me know if this works. We're trying something new because there's not a lot of viewers tonight. So if you are watching, sorry. Let me know if this works.
Okay. Oh, we have the infinite screens. Okay.
There's a lot of thumping still with your thing. Are you sure something isn't loose?
Yes, I'm sure.
Okay. So, all right.
Sorry for the distraction.
It just sounds like your earphone's loose or something.
No.
Can you hear this?
Talk to enough of them from time to time. If you think this thing made me rich or whatever, it probably
did. So something about rich.
It's too. This isn't. We don't have the equipment to pull this off right. We'll work on it and do again. Abort mission. It's too low. You can't hear it.
Report.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get to that someday when we can find a way to make it. Yeah. Anyway, so what else do you have to say? I guess we'll wrap it up. We kind of covered all that, right?
Well, yeah, and I would like to suggest that anyone who's viewing tonight or still listening to us now. If you want to suggest if there's a game that you think would benefit from, a live playthrough to show, example of what you consider an easy to play game, or if you want to suggest one that you consider to be a bit more difficult, we can see your Twitter, by the way.
Oops.
And your other stuff. So maybe you should, there you go.
I was
But
looking for replies.
if anyone has anything that they want to, highlight a game that you'd like us to delve into a little more deeply, or show a sample play, if it's something that we can gain access to do that, we'd be happy to do that. So please do reply in the comments. Let us know what you think, so that we can, deliver content that's what you're looking for. So
one of the individuals said that the volume was very low.
Oh,
if you're here and you can't hear us well, or have to turn it up inordinately high to hear us, please let us know. That might be keeping people away.
right.
And I wouldn't know until somebody tells me. I don't have the ability to suss that out on my own. So if it doesn't look good or doesn't sound good, if you hear technical glitches, let us know. We can try to fix them that way.
Absolutely. Yep. So thank you guys again for joining us for the discussion tonight. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the week. And we'll see you again on Monday for sure. But we might be adding in some other shows during the week. I've got a little more time now to spend on these. So you may be hearing from us more frequently. But thank you again for visiting. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. And until we see you again, happy gaming.
Bye.
Bye.